investigator and been in that position since 1989, there's evidence that she's falsifying investigations to cover up for judges. And so, just so that everybody's aware, every single complaint against a judge in this state goes to her. Everyone. And she's done about 8,000 investigations in the past 33 years. Not a single other person has conducted any judge investigation. If in fact she's corrupt, she may be solely responsible for hundreds or thousands of judges that should have been removed off the bench. And so if she's dirty, the damage or the harm to the public welfare and safety may be incalculable.
And what's her last name again?
Greenstein.
Greenstein.
And we put the evidence against her on the website Alaska State of Corruption. And just a brief overview is there was a complaint made that a judge was riding around with law enforcement during a trial. And the law enforcement was a witness in the trial. And then evidence came up missing while the evidence was in the trooper's hands and the judge's hands. And there was defense evidence. And so there was a complaint made. Well, the complaint, of course, went to Marla Greenstein. And she, after a year investigation, she says the judge is exonerated. There's no evidence that she was riding around with the trooper or tampering with evidence or anything. And so the judge remained on the bench. The problem is that all 4 witnesses that were given, along with the complaint of what they were doing, they all swore out affidavits that Marla Greenstein had never contacted them, and they all remembered the complaint of conduct. So then a complaint was filed against Marla Greenstein that she had falsified her investigation, and not only falsified contacting witnesses, but had wrote out false testimony for these witnesses and submitted it. I mean, so she just manufactured evidence for 4 witnesses and inserted it into the court record. So then a complaint was filed with the Bar Association because Marla Greenstein, she's not a judge, she's an attorney. So then, when you file a complaint with the Bar Association, the bar requires the judge to file a certified response. Either they can admit to the conduct or they can file a certified response. Well, Marla Greenstein, she comes back in a certified written response and says, I didn't just contact these 4 witnesses, I also contacted the defense attorney in the case. And that was her a defense to not contacting the first 4 witnesses. Well, the defense attorney was then deposed, and under oath he swore that Marla had never contacted him either, and that she remembered the chauffeur, or the defense attorney remembered the chauffeur. And so what it appears is that Marla Greenstein was guilty originally, and then when she got caught, she doubled down and covered up even more and got caught again. And so then when that happened, we went again to the Department of Law. We went to the Commission on Judicial Conduct. We went to the Judicial Council. We went to the Alaska State Troopers. We went to the FBI. We went everywhere with this evidence, and not a single entity investigated. They're all just like, Marla's a great person. She's doing a fine job. I mean, think of that. There's direct evidence that not only did she falsify an investigation, then she falsified certified documents, which is under penalty of perjury to cover up. And it's all laying right there and no one will investigate. Well, fast forward a decade. So that went on for a decade. We tried to get something done about her. So for another decade, she's falsifying continuing to investigate judges. Well, then some folks became aware that grand juries are supposed to investigate exactly things like this, where there is evidence of corruption but the evidence implicates people who have the ability to keep the Alaska State Troopers or the FBI or the Department of Law from investigating. And that's Marla Greenstein. If you want to know one person that probably has more skeletons in their closet than anyone, it's probably Marla Greenstein. Think about it. 33 years of investigating judges, and I think she said one judge in 33 years should have a sanction. It was a letter of reprimand. 33 years. We'll send a letter to one judge. Do you guys actually think in 33 years there's been only one judge that should be sanctioned?
No.
And remember, there's evidence that of judges that are sitting on the bench that were guilty, that she falsified the testimony of the witnesses. So anyway, when I was alerted to the fact that grand juries, their most important duty is to investigate this stuff, and I'm going to give you a quote of what the people who wrote Alaska's Constitution said. This is an exact quote from the 55 delegates. The grand jury is preserved for all purposes, particularly for investigation of public officials. Another quote from them. What's in the Constitution says, the power of grand juries to investigate and make recommendations concerning the public welfare or safety shall never be suspended. That's what's written right into our Constitution. They also said, the delegates said, the power of grand juries to investigate willful misconduct in office of public officials and to find indictments in connection therewith shall never be suspended. The delegates who wrote our Constitution said, we want the grand jury to go after any public official who goes off the rails. And if they find that they did wrong, we want them indicted, period. Totally excluding interference by the Department of Law, by troopers, by judges. The grand jury, and this group of people here would make a fine grand jury. There's probably at least 18, and a grand jury in Alaska is a minimum of 12, maximum 18, and they can have alternates. When they're sworn in, they can boot out all the judges out of the room, they can boot out all law enforcement, and then they can start issuing subpoenas. They can draw up their own subpoenas, or they can have an attorney come in and help. They can hire their own attorneys if they want. But that's what grand juries are supposed to do. They're supposed to be able to get away from oversight from government if government may have gone off the rails and you can't trust government officials. Well, so anyway, once we figured that out, Gabe, started protesting at the Kenai Courthouse, and then later on in Anchorage. Grand jurors started coming to us saying, "Hey, we want this evidence against Marla Greenstein." And like I said, 7 of them started investigating. In every case, judges and Department of Law personnel would go right into the grand jury room and say, "We are ordering you to stop." And some of the grand jurors that I've talked to said they pushed it so hard, they're like, "Well, the Constitution says we have the right to do this. Irregardless of what you say, the Constitution says we..." And the grand jurors told me, they pushed it so hard, they said if they had said one more word, they think they would have been arrested for contempt of court and thrown in prison. So that's how much pressure is being put on the grand juries to stop them from investigating Marla Greenstein and company.
Wow.
Well, in Kenai, I'm pretty hard-headed, some of you know, and some of you have helped. We went to the Kenai Courthouse and we started putting the boots to protesting. Every Wednesday when the grand jury would meet, we were there at 8 a.m. every morning for I think 3 or 4 months in a row.
Wow.
Waving signs, and we had the evidence against Marla, and people come by, "Hey, you want some evidence against Marla Greenstein? Are you a grand juror?" And all of a sudden the grand jury started getting more evidence, and another grand jury started investigating. Well, then a judge comes running in, or Judge Jennifer Wells ordered them to stop, and disbanded the grand jury. Didn't even want that grand jury to come back. Says, you're all fired. Get out of here. Don't come back. I mean, they're now shutting down grand juries. Not only shutting them down, but totally disbanding them. When that happened, it kind of broke the camel's back, because we then said that we would go into the courthouse and not leave. We would conduct our protest inside the courthouse, forcing them to arrest us. And then we would ask for a jury trial and lay out what is going on. And it would have, well, and we had some help from our legislators, primarily Representative Ben Carpenter. And sometimes he doesn't necessarily like it but he has integrity. He is a good man, has a good heart. We need to support him, but we need all of you to call your own legislators. We need all the legislators to help us. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. But because of that, we put enough pressure on the Department of Law and the governor that they impaneled a special grand jury. This is a grand jury that isn't brought in on a regular basis. Normal grand juries are brought in for 3 months, and they indict people based on investigations by the prosecutor and law enforcement. And then if that grand jury thinks of something it wants to investigate on its own, it can do that. But a lot of times when that happens, then that grand jury doesn't have time to do the normal work of indicting people based on investigations by law enforcement. And so a lot of times there has to be a separate grand jury impaneled to do the investigation while another grand jury does what grand juries normally do if they're not investigating. And does anybody have any question about that? But that's kind of how grand juries work in Alaska. So if I confuse people or...
They're pretty powerful, huh?
Oh, they're incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So what happened, I forget, what was it, like July of 2022, is a special grand jury was impaneled. In other words, the law enforcement was not invited in, whatever. They started investigating this Marla Greenstein and some other evidence. And the other evidence is evidence that previous grand juries were illegally and unconstitutionally stopped. Because you guys are smart enough to realize that the Constitution says grand juries cannot be stopped, and they're being stopped. That's a problem, right? So not only was this grand jury investigating Marla Greenstein, the judge investigator, she's now they're investigating the Deputy Attorney General and the judges that were shutting down grand juries. So they've got a lot to look at. So they start investigating, and I may forget some stuff, and some of you know the story probably almost as well as I do, and if I get off track, kind of remind me. But the key thing is this grand jury is investigating corruption, and remember, normal grand juries go for 3 months, they're sunsetted, and then they impanel a new one. This one, about 4 or 5 months in, they decide it's time to subpoena Marla Greenstein in and a bunch of the judges that she exonerated. And I think all of you probably think that's probably a good idea, right? I mean, we need to get to the bottom of what's going on. Immediately after they do that, the Alaska Supreme Court comes out and rewrites the rules, the court rules for grand juries, and says, you guys can't investigate, we're taking away your power to indict, and we're going to change the rules where citizens can no longer give the grand jury evidence directly. And all of that is written in statute and in the Constitution. Go ahead.
I was going to say, statutes cannot override the Constitution. What is their authority for doing that?
Power of the pen. You're right. But what they're doing is they're trying to run a bluff. They're basically saying, we're going to do this, and when you try to say you can't, we're going to call in a bunch of troopers and city police, and we're going to try to go, ooh, and see if you spook and run. And that's why we're all talking, and that's why we've been going to the courthouse, is I'm not going to spook and I'm not going to run. And I'm asking all of you to not spook and not run, and we haven't, and I don't think that's probably an option at this point. So that occurred. What is even more unbelievable, and I'm going to go over this fairly carefully if I can, is Thomas Garber right here had the bright idea of trying to figure out how they did this. I work in the summer construction and I get busy, and But anyway, Thomas did a great thing. He went in and the order from them is called Supreme Court Order 1993, short for SCO. SCO is Supreme Court Order 1993. So he went in and got the kind of the background on how this occurred. Well, he ended up getting, I don't know why they gave it to you, but it was crazy for them to give it to him. Because it documents, there's internal emails from the Supreme Court to some of their staff attorneys, and then emails between the Supreme Court Justice Winfrey, he now retired, and Alaska's Attorney General, Craig Taylor. And what it documents, I didn't even know this, that when rule changes occur like this, the Supreme Court doesn't write it up. They have a rules committee. It's a 13-member rules committee made up of lawyers and judges, and I think there might be some private people, but I think it's mostly lawyers and judges. And they go through and they get a bunch of input from all kinds of people. In fact, I think a lot of times even the public, and says, okay, we're thinking about a rule change and we want to know if there's the pros and cons. And it's a many month-long process, if not year-long process to change rules. Well, and it's 13 members. Well, there's an internal memorandum. They bypassed that rules committee, didn't invite them to the party. The Alaska Supreme Court wrote it up on their own, just the five members. And then to kind of sort of cover up what they're doing, right before they implemented this rule change, 1993, they sent out an email to the 13-member rules committee, like days before it was going to be implemented. And so out of the 13, only 3 rules committee members had time to respond. 2 of the 3 said you can't do this without us weighing in because it concerns changes of a constitutional nature. Supreme Court, and there was a rules committee meeting already set up for like about 2 weeks later. Supreme Court didn't wait for that, just passed it anyway, and in the face of protests from the rules committee. So what it appears like is they bypassed the oversight of their own rules committee to do this. So I mean, you understand, not only is it totally blatantly unconstitutional, it appears they knew it was unconstitutional, knew that they wouldn't be able to accomplish it if they did it through the normal processes, so they just bypassed that process. And it's all in their own words. Pretty spooky stuff.
Sounds like the assembly.
Yeah. Well,
it sounds like the whole rest of the United
I was going to
States.
say, it's right in step with the DC crowd.
Well, yeah, but anyway, we put that out. I went to the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly, and they wrote a resolution, passed it unanimously, said this is wrong. We want the legislature to start conducting hearings on what the Supreme Court did. Haynesboro Assembly just recently unanimously passed a resolution saying we believe this SC 1993 is unconstitutional. We want something done. I want everybody to go to your borough assemblies, or and I know in Anchorage here it might be a tougher nut to crack. but you understand is early on we went to the Homer City Council and they said that's the most liberal place ever. And I don't care about liberal or unanimously they passed a resolution. So you understand is this issue is unique. It isn't like our normal issues. This issue resonates with everyone because it is a fundamental right. Anyone has a problem. Liberal, Democrat, LGBTQ, anybody has a problem and the government's putting their thumb on. Everybody has a right to go to the grand jury. So everybody is on board with this issue. And that's why our protests are getting bigger and more folks around the state are upset. Something else that occurred, kind of why I really thought it was a good idea to have another protest. And if you folks remember, we had one on March 15th, and it was to kind of, my main idea was to try to get the media involved because, lo and behold, this Kenai grand jury is still investigating. 10 months later, they're still investigating. They've extended their term. When it came out what the Supreme Court had done, they were going to wrap it up. I believe they are now investigating even maybe the Supreme Court. We need these grand juries to see us out there with signs going, hey, I had some signs saying, grand jury, we have your back. And a lot of them are, most of them are like, grand jury investigations now, let the grand jury investigate. Basically, we have multiple horses running in this race right now. We have a grand jury that's still investigating. They may come out with some unbelievable, what if they indict a bunch of judges in Marla Greenstein? The cat would be out of the bag, I think. They could write a report, they could do many things. But also now what we got going on is we have these resolutions to the legislature calling for hearings on this. And you understand that if Marla Greenstein goes in there and says, oh yeah, I contacted this witness and that one and that one and that one, and they didn't see a thing, and then you all get up there, swear under oath and say, hey, she never contacted us and she falsified what I seen, don't you think the Alaska public will go,
what the hell?
What the hell, exactly. And see, until that happens though, I can tell everybody what's going on and they're just like, well, you're crazy, Dave Haeg's crazy. But see, now we're getting to where everybody's having to swear under oath and the rubber's starting to meet the road. We pursued it long enough, the rubber is meeting the road. And so anyway, that was kind of our last protest, was kind of to get that ball rolling. Well, since we've got that ball rolling, now what has happened, and I'll try to keep this as short as I can, the court system general counsel, a lady by the name of Nancy Meade, and the Deputy Attorney General, John Skidmore, and remember, John Skidmore is the exact one that shut down a bunch of the previous grand juries that tried to investigate. So he is a bad apple. He needs to go, or he at least needs to be investigated. So anyway, now Nancy Meade and John Skidmore are going around to the legislators, primarily to the judiciary committees and to borough assemblies, and doing this song and dance on how SCO 1993 is the best thing since fried chicken. They come out and are saying things like, grand jurors can't decide what to investigate on their own. We have to approve it all. When you look at what the delegates wrote Alaska's Constitution, it was the grand juries that decide, because if corruption crops up inside government, guess what? The government won't go running up to a grand jury and say, here's the evidence against me. Will you please investigate this?
Right.
Guess what? They won't do that. One of the really amazing things is Nancy Meade and John Skidmore, and I'm going to try to be pretty accurate. Over and over they say, Alaskan citizens do not and never have had a right to appeal to the grand jury directly. Over and over they're telling that. They said, citizens can never go to the grand jury. Do you want to know what the delegates' exact words are? They said, one of the most invaluable rights, I should read the exact thing.
Okay.
I don't have it here, but anyway, it is that.
Somebody will find it for you.
Yeah, it says that one of the most invaluable rights of the citizen is to be able to appeal to the grand jury directly. And so, is that in any way unclear to any of you?
No.
And that statement by our delegates, the 55 delegates who wrote Alaska's Constitution, it was not disputed by any one of them. So they all 55 agreed. They all agreed that one of the most invaluable rights of all of you here, every one of you individually, is to go directly to the grand jury and appeal to them without any Any interference, anybody in the way, anybody telling you you can't, anybody telling you what you can and can't give to them. You go right into the courthouse, you walk right up to the door that says Grand Jury, and you knock on it, and you go in and you give them your information. And they said that was an invaluable right. And now Nancy Meade, the general counsel to the Alaska court system, and our deputy attorney general, the second highest law enforcement agent in the entire state, are going around to our legislators saying that citizens do not have and never have had a right to appeal directly to the grand jury. Do anybody here see a problem with that?
Yeah.
It's a bald-faced lie.
It is. Go ahead.
If I might say that their lawyers tend to use words in very interesting ways, and there is legally a difference in definition between a citizen and a resident. Citizens and residents versus civil law versus common law.
Oh my goodness.
Well, they're not making that distinction. What they're saying is that only people that get to appeal to the grand jury are us, our government officials, and so they're not actually doing that. They haven't got that anal
It's
about
like
it.
all common folk in general.
Yeah, and so they haven't gone there. But what I'm saying is in this process, you're right. Usually there's enough verbiage. Usually the battles that we've been fighting for decades here on this issue, they've had far more cover, far more leaves on the trees, far more grass, and I'm a master guide. Do you know how easy one of these bears can hide in an alder patch? I mean, you can't. This bear can go in an alder patch, no bigger than this house, and you'll look for a week to find him.
Can they blend in?
Usually, the lawyers have far more cover to hide. This is so blatantly black and white. That's why I always try to seize upon when they make really blatant mistakes. Because everybody knows that if the delegate said one of the most invaluable rights to the citizen is to be able to appeal directly to the grand jury, and they're saying a citizen does not and never had a right to appeal to the grand jury directly, you put them two statements next to each other and you go, somebody's wrong. There is no shades of gray. And so so that's basically where we're at. If anybody's got any questions, and again, what I would love to see is to have each and every one of your word that at some point tomorrow you'll be there at the Anchorage Nesbitt Courthouse. I guess we're in Anchorage.
0800.
Yep. And ABC News said they'll be there and cover it. So there's going to be TV cameras, and we need this issue to be seen in King Salmon, and I mean there's people in Craig, Alaska. I don't really know where Craig is, but they said that they're going to their borough assembly for stuff. This guy in Haines got this awesome resolution passed. Never met him, don't know where he came from, but because of what we're doing, yesterday I was on a Zoom call for 2 hours. Folks down in, I don't know, where was it, like Kentucky, are hearing about what's happening here. People in the whole U.S. are going, wow, what's going on up in Alaska? Man, this sounds serious. We need to, so words start to
Kind of begs the question that if we never had the power to begin with, why would they have to make a rule saying we don't have the power?
Exactly.
Good.
Right.
Wes.
I was just
Exactly.
going to say, how do we need
Yeah.
a resolution for what's already in
That's
the
a
Constitution?
really good question.
It's kind of obvious.
Well,
Dave,
yeah.
are you going to appeal this to the Ninth Circuit Court?
I have an appeal in the Supreme Court, and once, I've got to go through that process, but yes, it would go to the next step.
I looked into it, and we do have some very good people down, most of them in the lower U.S., lawyers that are kind of following this. Because Alaska's constitution is so specific, this is an Alaska constitutional issue. It has to, the only way you can appeal to federal court is if it violates federal law or the federal constitution. Federal agencies do not protect state rights. There are, because of this kind of overt conspiracy, now people are saying, man, it almost meets like the RICO Act. I don't know if you
Yep,
know what
yep.
RICO Act is. Racketeering,
Yes.
influence, corrupt organization. But it's a long stretch to sell that to the normal, to people that haven't been following this. So we don't go there. We just go with this other stuff and keep, you know what I mean? Is it's kind of like we do that, it's like opening the pressure cooker. And right now, the gauge is at like 25 pounds. You know, the red line's at what, 15, I think, on pressure cookers? We're at 25 now, and it's building. My advice is don't take the lid off by, you know, saying, oh, let's go to federal court. Let's just keep it in state and say, we're going to fix this in state. Our Constitution says we have these rights. We live in Alaska, and by God, we're going to protect these rights. We don't need no FB. And there's another issue here that is incredibly shocking. And I'll run this by you. And like I said, if I need to, I don't know how much time I want to do with this or take with this. When the stuff cropped up with Marla Greenstein and the troopers didn't do anything, and then the bar, and when she perjured herself to the bar, I went right to the bar. Whoo! Look at this. They're like, we don't see nothing. They threw it right in the garbage. They didn't care. Well, my business attorney, who's the only one that kind of was telling me the truth, I'm like, holy cow. I said, we need to go to the FBI. He says, yeah, it's time to go to the FBI. So we go. This was over a decade ago. Before we go up, I get on the horn, you know, I'm like, hey, I don't know, again, maybe I'll call Ted Stevens. Ted says, come on up. Says, I'll set aside some time for you. Call Don Young's office. Don Young, yep, come on up. Talk to Lisa Murkowski. I said, yeah, come on up. So I go up. I actually met with Don Young's office first. He assigned, I think it was his chief of staff to help us. His name was Greg Kaplan. We then went to Ted Stevens' office. Ted Stevens said, since Don's already helping you, I'm not going to duplicate it. He said, but if Don needs more horsepower, you just come back and Don will have all the horsepower he needs. Then we went to Lisa Murkowski's office and basically got just about kicked out the door. She was unwilling to help. But irregardless of that, and at that point, I don't know, you know, maybe she was busy or whatever. But what happened is we then had meetings with a section chief of the FBI by the name of Colton Seal, S-E-A-L-E. And Greg Kaplan, Don Young's chief of staff, attended him, my business attorney, some troopers that were witness to what Marla Greenstein had done, attended. And we laid out what happened. And Colton Seal, the FBI guy, said, we've had a number of complaints nearly identical to yours. You know, where troopers and judges and everybody's ganging up, basically rigging trials. Basically going to court and the trial's rigged. And then when you complain, it's all covered up by the judges and by the judge investigator and the troopers and the bar. They all just, oh, we love it. So they confirm that that is going on, you know, across the board. And then he says, in every case, our investigation expanded rapidly and implicated nearly everyone. Okay, does that sound like there's nothing there? Okay. And I'm like, woohoo, we're going to get them all. He says, no, wait a minute. He says, in every case, a call came from Washington, D.C. to pull the plug and ditch the evidence.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
But they did for my case.
Okay. Well, I've testified to this grand jury in Kenai twice. And you know what I told them? I'm like, there's a few people you have to subpoena and get to the bottom of what's going on. Guess what one of them that I said is? A guy by the name of Colton Seal, the FBI guy. Guess who they've subpoenaed
Yay.
and questioned. So you understand how big this may be?
Yeah.
And when I was talking to Colton Seal, when he said that this call came from Washington, I'm like, who would have the horsepower to shut down an active FBI investigation? I said, would it be our congressional delegation, meaning Ted Stevens, Don Young? And he's like, I wouldn't know. I mean, that's his exact words, I wouldn't know. But I personally do not believe it was Ted Stevens, because Ted Stevens helped us get in with the FBI. I don't think it was Don Young. Don Young set it up. You know, it could be Lisa Murkowski, because she had cold feet. but maybe it's something else. But Alaskans need to know exactly what is going on, who is making those calls. And whoever it is needs to be brought back here and given to something like this before it's dead.
Given the security.
Because, and that was decades ago. If this has been going on for decades, I know there's people here that have lost their kids, lost their freedom, lost their careers, lost all kinds of things.
Railroaded.
Yeah, and so we're slowly getting to the bottom of it, I think. And so, anyway.
I have a comment, David. I was listening to something or reading something not long ago, and it says, it struck me, so I wrote it down. Any statute that does not support the United States Constitution is null and void.
That's correct.
Yes, so, what they did was, what the Alaska Constitution, what the judges did by taking away part of our rights as jurors, they also took away our due process of law. And it violated the amendments 5 and 14 of the Constitution.
Good job.
I have written an article that lays all that out, if you guys want to see this.
If you'll allow me to piggyback on what she's bringing up here, there's a statement in here that the delegates made quite powerfully. The power of the grand juries to inquire into the willful misconduct in office of public officers and to find indictments in connection therewith shall never be suspended. So that basically goes hand in hand with Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which says those rights will never be suspended. And I want to address what you brought up right at the very beginning here, where you said that the statutes that are against the Constitution are not true law. However, this is important. Our Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, is supported by our statutes in this state. We have a statute that goes by 12.40040, and it says if an individual grand juror knows or has reason to believe that a crime has been committed that is triable by the court, the juror shall disclose it to the other jurors who shall investigate it. Why that's important is 1993, when you read the printed language of it, it takes that right away from the grand jurors to do that. And it puts it in the hands of the prosecutor or the judge. So that's why I read the first one that the delegates were outlining about public officers and being able to investigate them. And then I wanted you to know that our state statutes actually back Article 1, Section 8. What the Supreme Court did with 1993 is not just unconstitutional, it's creating unlawful laws, which the judicial part of our government has no business doing. That comes from the legislative part of our government. They make laws, the judges do not.
Right, we're saying the same thing.
The only point
backwards.
I was trying to make is that our statutes actually back the constitutional language. It's not like nobody's created laws. The Supreme Court cannot create laws.
That's right.
But the state statutes that we already have support exactly Article 1, Section 8 as it's written.
And they have to, because statutes can never overcome.
Well, they do write laws that are...
They can, but they're null and void. Again, if you think about it, the Constitution created the whole government, and the legislature is part of the government, right? So this lower body, the legislature, cannot override this upper body, which is the Constitution.
That's correct, but they do it all the time.
They do it all the time. That's true. We're going to have. That's what we're going to have to fix, rather than nibbling around the edges.
The Constitution was ignored by.
There's no if, ands, or but if you use the word shall.
Apparently the Constitution gets in everybody's way, doesn't it?
It's a pesky thing.
Yeah.
But,
Not a may. Yeah, it's not may. Shall.
but yeah, it basically boils down to, I think we've got the Supreme Court pretty well trapped, and we just need to keep, pushing forward, getting the word out and, asking for the hearings that the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly asked for. It's a unanimously passed resolution asking, pointing out the inconsistencies, and then, so the way I look at it is the bear has tried to hide in the brush it can, but there's almost no brush left, and as long as we keep moving forward, and we don't have to do anything unusual, we have to just be calm, cool, and collected, don't do anything radical that we could be labeled as crazy or whatever. We just say, hey, here's, the Supreme Court and Nancy Meade and John Skidmore say, the citizens never had, or do not, and never had a right to appeal directly to the grand jury. But delegates who wrote our Constitution says that's one of the most invaluable rights, is to appeal to the grand jury directly. And then the other stuff. And so just keep it, whatever that
And we have
kiss.
an affidavit from Mr. Nelson on that.
Yeah, we've got some backup also, but yes, what I'm advocating is we don't go out and look for too much more. We just keep it what we've got. That's real simple.
Well,
and
if you were going to
straightforward.
write, if you were going to write your representative, do you have a very simple?
I
Do you
do.
have information in your
Yep.
all of your papers that basically say what these two characters are going around telling the legislature versus what it actually says in
Yep,
our state constitution?
I put it right next, yes.
Great.
I just said,
That's
here's
accessible.
what they're saying, here's what the delegate said, here's what they said. And it's just, you read it and you're just like,
Good.
but it's almost so blatant that people kind of like, they're like,
And the other thing that you should notice about our legislature right now, and the assembly, because y'all are from Anchorage, if you know anything about this assembly, we're crazy. They do not want anybody else doing their job. They are the legislature. You need to be able to put it to them like, hey, these people are stealing your job. They won't like it, because you have to, I think we have to trick the legislature most of the time into actually wanting to do it, especially
Vanity.
if they're, yes, there you go.
well, if you think about this, we're basically saying all 5 Alaska Supreme Court justices are corrupt to the core, and fundamentally trying to, and they're corrupt not just on like giving a bunch of money to Exxon or this. They're trying to fundamentally take away rights to cover up their own corruption. They may be, and so it's so self-serving.
Corruption usually follows money, though, so there's probably
Well,
money in
there
here
is,
somewhere.
but this is even more obvious and
Just open the
blatant
door
than
and let
that.
them in.
It's typically moving the goalposts is what's going on.
But anyway, we're hey,
Hey.
where the heck did you come from?
Huh?
No?
Yeah,
Sweet.
but I'm here for work, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw your email.
Kelso, Ethan Kelso, I guess is his name.
Yes, sir.
You want some dinner?
Huh? Oh, I'm okay for right now.
Yeah, I
You
think
want a
there's
chair?
still
There's one in the
some,
closet.
There's one right there.
Or there's one right there.
I can only stay for a bit, but
Okay.
I thought I'd come
Well,
by and
yeah,
heard about
we-
you inside. See.
Wow.
Ethan went out with my daughter and we took the
Oh.
snow machine, gave him a couple flying lessons. And when I go to Nome, he's my,
Point of contact.
he's my go-to guy in Nome. So
Right
he
on.
still owes me some king crab though, I think.
I'm the king crab manager now. So,
Really?
Yeah, come see.
Woohoo! Like it. Um,
So I'm curious,
should
what
say
is your
assistant.
what is your end goal here? Because if the Supreme Court is corrupt, then there's going to have to be a higher authority that's going to, like, I don't know, jail them or what. Going to show up if it's not going to be the FBI and it's not going to be the court system.
Yeah,
What's
you're
your
gonna
end
go in and
game?
make a citizen's arrest?
we actually have.
Well, you
talked about that.
can. Well, I don't know.
But we have a petition that has a pile of signatures on it that is going to the legislature calling for their impeachment. They could start, see,
Yeah, but
this,
who's impeaching? Is that the Senate? The Senate's as corrupt as they are. I mean, I don't understand,
Well-
I mean, I love it, but I don't understand where you're
Yeah.
going.
You have to, the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly passed a resolution asking for hearings. And it's simply because the, the delegates said this, and now the Supreme Court and the general counsel for the court system saying this, and the deputy attorney general. You start hearings on that, and people come up, I mean, they will have to either not testify or take the fifth. I mean, it literally is that, the attorneys might wiggle somehow or some way, but once that occurs, people will understand fundamentally there's something wrong. We have to keep pushing forward. We can't just say, we don't know what to do. And if you have a better idea, let me know. But I will tell you this, that we have an enormous amount of pressure on things right now. I mean, if there's anybody here that doubts that, we got more press coverage on March 15th with all the TV cameras. Fairbanks, it was the major TV news. Anchorage here was on KTUU that night and in the morning. ABC Fox, it was their major thing. We got more TV, more press coverage in one day than we did in the previous 3 decades, all put together.
Yes.
I think we're on the right track.
You've got
And
some-
you just stay in that groove, and I don't know, it might not be tomorrow, and it might not be the next day, and it might not, but we just stay there, and we keep doing this, and, rather than having this, 20 people here, or whatever we got here, we have another thing at like the Ben Boki Arena. You know what I mean? We just keep, and
Pushing.
keep pushing, and growing numbers, and keep pounding away at it.
I don't know if you know this or not, but somebody mentioned that when we were down there at the last one of Nesbitt, they were actually closing blinds in the courthouse.
Oh, yeah. So
Uh,
they didn't have to see the protesters
so they
outside.
Yeah, do you guys have signs?
Yeah,
Huh?
lots of signs.
Yeah.
They're well equipped with signs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were closing all the blinds as
Yeah.
a lot of us were walking down the street
Right.
back and forth, and they were closing the blinds at street level.
Well, at the Kenai Courthouse, listen to this, they blocked off the Kenai Courthouse and had them come in the back, and we talked to the grand jurors, they said they were going through closets and crawling through little holes so that they didn't have to see all of us out in front. And then, and the grand juror said, when they started doing that, they said they knew we were right and they were wrong.
Uh-huh.
If there's nothing to fear,
Right.
why not? And the thing is the Constitution says the power of grand juries to investigate shall never be suspended. How come they won't let the grand jury investigate? It's as
Can we
simple as
form
that.
our own grand juries?
No. You can, but it ain't official. It's written in it, and I've had people say that just any group of people can come together and be an official grand jury. I don't believe it. It's not written in statute, it's not in the Constitution. And believe you me, I've had lots of people say, oh, you're barking up the wrong tree. I don't think so. I think I've made it further down the way I look at it, like me and Kels or whatever, probably with a snow machine or something. A lot of times you get in a bowl and you can't get out. You don't make it out on your first run. Deep snow. You make a path and you turn out, and then you go right up that path again. You make another 20 feet and you turn out, and then you go up. And that's what we're doing. And each time we go up, we're going further and further.
Yeah.
Pretty soon we're going to go wheeling over the top, and woohoo, we're out of here.
Now, if we
Leave all the
hit the
judges
top,
in the
and
dust.
if Marla Greenstein or some other people are in fact indicted, okay, we need to think about how that trial, how that's gonna be conducted, because it's not just Marla Greenstein, the whole judicial system, everybody's got some dirt in their closet, and how do we, try to make sure there's that trial that's fair?
Yep.
I would be willing to bet there would never be a fair trial. I mean, you hit the
That's
nail
my
on the head.
problem.
But what's going to, the way I look at it is, we get them indicted, the majority of Alaska will then believe there is a problem, which is the main problem we're up against.
Yeah.
And that first go around, say the first decade after some get indicted, we probably won't get too many convictions. We'll have to start weeding out You are right. I thought about it. You're absolutely right. There's no way that they're gonna sell, you know.
But if
The only way you maybe could is if you brought judges in from somewhere else to
Yeah, can
conduct
we
the
ask,
trial.
I mean, that should be
Yes.
thinking about a little bit.
Well, I have, yeah.
Okay.
You know, you could grow your numbers a lot if you had a research team that would dig up all these cases that Marla Greenstein had her hands in. You contact those people and let them send them mailers, and I have one for you. I have a printer that will do it for you for pretty much free.
Well,
Sweet.
it
Yeah.
would be something if you did
Yeah.
start putting on pressure.
And I will hold fundraisers for you. I mean,
Well-
any one of you guys who wants to have 10 or 15 people here in this house until May, well, hopefully I have some clients in May, but if I don't have clients, if we want to have more little parties like this, let's do it. I'm serious. If you'll come up, Doc,
Yeah,
we need to.
Jessica?
I'm already collecting cases and organizing if you guys wanna contact me, I'm on Facebook, Jessica Schultz Pleasant. And I know we're trying to create an organization administrative to bring in these things as a personal, future project, but, what I'm concerned is that the SCO 1993 gave a lot of power to the prosecutor, but HB 7 that just came out gives a ton of power to somebody that is an administrative law judge, which is different than an administrative judge. And it's it's giving broad language, like she can cover entities or other professionals, and then there's time limits even on bringing. Yeah, you need to look at HB 7, so that's it.
Well, and I know that there was some other bills and stuff that John Skidmore and Nancy Meade were basically inserting language to get, you know, it isn't blatant, the whole bill isn't about their stuff, but they're trying to kind of insert stuff in there to make, so that they can say, oh, it's in statute here and there, you know, obtusely somewhat, but to kind of basically entangle the legislature in what they're trying to do. They don't do it blatantly, but they're trying to do that, but I know that some of the legislators are catching on to it. But they're trying to escape out of any hole in the net that there is. I mean, they're pretty, you know, I think they're caught pretty tight, but yeah. Anyway,
Are you gonna help or support my efforts to, the Supreme Court appeal on 1993 that I've filed? I'm needing help to write the appeal, or write the brief for the appeal.
well, I try to help where I can work.
Well,
I've
word of
already
mouth
been,
and, telling
Yeah.
people that I'm not a lawyer, and I don't, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, but I've got this appeal in process. I'm, doing the best I can with, they gave me the records from what they considered the only thing in the record, the official record was what, the orders from the court. They didn't insert any of this information that I had given Judge Morris, but now, after I filed a motion to supplement, now they're gathering that information and they're gonna bring it, give me that. I don't know what's gonna be in it, there's gonna be some more, arguments or, motions that are gonna have to be made. But when it comes down to the actual writing of the appeal, the brief, I need some help and, some input, and doing some research or whatever. But I guess from you is just tell people that you need help in that regards. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
well,
David Ingell.
I'm sorry?
David Ingell is a lawyer.
Oh, yeah, I've spoken with him, but he's busy with, doing writing his articles and stuff, but yeah, he's one resource, and as I write it, I'll bounce it off of him, and that's basically what I want. I'm not, I'd love to have a lawyer that take it over and,
Hey,
do.
Google it.
What's the
How
case number?
about if we have an event like this, and I get a bunch of attorneys here
There you go.
for you to have a presentation.
Long
No,
as
I'm
we got-
serious.
As long as we got a sling and a light post
Well,
out
even
front.
if we had one or two that could at least help with.
Well, there, I will
With
say this,
silence.
that in the past, I've had a bunch of attorneys that I've been to, whatever. This scares
I was just
scares
gonna
most
say,
attorneys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We say, you talk about going after the Bar Association, the Supreme Court, and you know who is the final authority for the Bar Association? It's the Alaska Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Most attorneys are terrified to even touch this. They all know what's going on.
Right.
But because if they try to help us and then we lose, their career's over.
Right.
You know, and so that's one of the
This is the
problems.
statement of the points on appeal, and I've gotta write a brief based on these points on appeal. Like David Haeg helped me write these, you know, I had no idea what, he brought up a lot of, you know, the amendment, or the constitutional, and so,
would you give me the case number so I can look it up?
yeah, well, yeah, you can look up the Supreme Court case number, it's S18611. And I can give you any of the documents that, but I wrote up, what was it, 14 different, 15 different points on appeal. And it's all based on the Supreme Court Order 1993 violating the Constitution and violating our rights to the rights to the grand jury. And I can send this to you, and you know, through email or whatever you
I
want.
think I wrote to you on Facebook.
Yeah,
just
you may
this
have.
one. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I have some of your papers from the,
Right.
last one.
Thomas, I wonder if you could contact like the university and get some legal law students or
Yeah.
paralegals, because they could at least
I'm
start.
an alumni of UAF, so there's no law college here though.
Yeah, you'd have to go to floor 48 for it, there's no.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they might be a resource that you could call.
I've been hoping to try to find somebody from out of state, that, you know, a lawyer to help. I don't know, I feel, you know, with this, it's over,
Yes.
a lot of pressure.
It is
Yeah, it's overwhelming,
because there's a
you know,
lot
doing all
of
this
funds,
research is
and
like,
they've got a lot of resources that you
Yeah.
don't, so.
yeah,
When I
exactly.
went through this
And that's
with
what I'm
my
hoping, is that the
granddaughter,
group can
I
help,
went through
you know,
the whole
support this.
process
And I need, you
with the
know, help.
FBI
Wait,
and
wait.
everything. Afterwards, the
All the
clerk
families will get
of
going.
court refused to even take my paperwork. I couldn't even file. I still can't. That's why I haven't done anything. I went to 92 lawyers. I opened the yellow pages, went to every night. 32 of them said that they filed, or they signed paperwork saying they will not file against the state on any case. Doesn't matter. Out of 90.
This is an OCS case.
Yes.
You're coming to my meeting on the 30th. We will be meeting here from 11 to probably 3. And I'm just telling you right now, I'm
I
begging you to come.
have all the evidentiary support. I've shared it with Sharon and
I have it.
Thomas.
I have copies of it.
So
Yeah.
I have her whole file.
I was really just opening my home so David had a place to tell you guys all this stuff. I'd heard a little bit about it, but I hadn't heard this much. It's kind of new to me. I've been focused on the assembly. But I am currently, I've been fighting for 2 years and now 87 days for custody of my granddaughter, whom I've been raising since she was 3 days old. I brought her home from the hospital. And I'm now in the process of adopting, but they have done everything. They used my military sexual trauma against me. They used the fact that I used child care and the fact that I have the PTSD, and there's something
They
else
used
I always
everything
forget.
against
They did, and they retaliated against me so blatantly so that, I mean, it's pretty much an open and shut case. And my attorney says, well, shit, you don't have anything in here. They can't do this. Because I filed a complaint against the caseworker. They stand your ground. He says, you are an example. My attorney says, I can't believe you did not back down. In one email, they said, okay, we're going to offer you a new home study, adoption study, even though the first one was, they recommended, but they said I have mental health issues and I might be abusive. Okay, might be abusive and mental health issues. The next one is that, in the next sentence is, if you have a new adoption study without contacting the previous adoption writer, and it comes back positive, then we'll let you adopt. Or, if you will waive the money, the stipend that comes with your granddaughter, then we'll let you adopt. But that doesn't have anything,
Whoa.
I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, okay, so you're gonna give me an abusive?
They'll give you.
I just beat their ass. I won, they caved and gave up, and I said to my attorney, can we sue? He says, abso-fucking-lutely. And we're trying to get enough of a class action. The problem is, families are so incredibly different, and the reasons, what we need are 5 commonalities, and I think, you know, my case is gonna win, open and shut. And I'm gonna take a large portion of my proceeds, I'm gonna put it back into this. Because this system, I've been working with it for 26 years, it's ridiculous, it's the 3rd kid.
See, that's the same thing I've been doing.
I actually have a letter where OCS overturned my charges after the judge put them on it. So I have them admitting on paper they lied about me.
Corrupt system.
Because I'm
All the way from the
quasi-famous
top
and they
through
mixed
and
me
through
up
to
with
the
a
bottom.
lady with a similar name that was a native and similar
Oh,
description.
damn system.
And so later they overturned it,
Scary.
but too late for me.
Well, anybody, if you guys want, the problem is when you come, if you come on the 30th, it's foster parents, relative placements, and I'm asking everybody to bring like a synopsis of your case because we cannot sit around here for 4 hours listening to everybody rehash their case. What we need to do is teach people how to line their cases up and then give them, and I've got kind of a thing, and I think Jessica's gonna help me. We need a spreadsheet, and we need to start putting our cases in chronological order and doing stuff to help ourselves and learning how to use our policies and procedures against them. 20-something years ago, I was the reason that they instituted a grievance procedure for OCS. And I do have a little bit of an inside scoop with some friendships in OCS that are helpful. They know the problem exists. They do want to fix it. This person's, I think her heart's in the right place, but we'll see.
I'd like to see a list, collective list of everybody's complaint and marking down how many complaints this person has.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
what I'm trying to.
I have some social worker families, members, and they are threatened to silence, coerced.
That's exactly my point. I was threatened, intimidated, harassed, retaliated against. I mean, they came into my house and were like,
They took her kids away.
yeah. Well, and
then
see,
all
so
they did was put them on a vacation and bring them back and say, as long as you're obedient, this won't happen again.
So the 30th, everybody would come and you want them here, and that's a good time to organize and
well, we're going to be talking, and all right, everybody solemnly swear you will not tell anybody outside of this room.
You are live. You can't do that.
The camera.
Okay, we'll tell you later, but there's a special reason this meeting is going to happen on the 30th, and if you want to be there, you should be there. I do want to keep it to where you have to have proof. If you don't have paperwork proof, and if you can't track how they retaliated against you, if you don't know the statute, or you can't write it down in one page, they violated this. Example. The caseworker came to my home, picked up my granddaughter who weighed 16 pounds, and put her in a front-facing toddler seat against Alaska statutes and transported her. My granddaughter was endangered by a state worker. What's happened to her? Pretty much nothing. She's got a job, and I was harassed and threatened because I filed a complaint against her. And I am going to not stop until that caseworker is not even living in this state again. So
Dave,
if you have that kind of proof, put it in chronological order, get in touch with me, I'll send you the kind of 10 things that we need from you so that we can hand it to the attorney.
okay, so we need to show up tomorrow at before 8 o'clock,
Yes.
really.
Well, yeah, and
7:40.
it would be good to have everybody there at 8, I would say.
Parking meters kick in at 9 a.m., right?
I have no idea.
I think it's free
Don't
parking
know.
until 9.
I don't
think it's 8.
I don't live in Anchorage, so I
It's
don't
at
necessarily like
9.
Anchorage.
9 to 6, you have to pay for parking.
It scares me.
Anyways, I gotta take off here,
Okay,
Dave.
well-
Excellent to see you, and the best of luck, and to
Nice to
everybody
meet
in
you.
here.
Yeah,
Take care.
Excellent.
And I'm gonna hold you to the king crab.
We'll come up to noon, yeah,
Okay.
I help manage that.
If you
And
know
it's gonna be a
anybody-
good year. It's
Sweet.
gonna be a good year.
Okay.
Probably the only place fishing for king crab in Alaska.
Okay.
We'll see. Alright,
Well, good seeing you.
good seeing you as well.
Okay.
Best of luck.
I'd like to make a point, somebody over here was asking about what we can do.
A lot.
The grand jury is essentially our fourth pillar of government. David's got all this evidence, along with a lot of other people. But when you're trying to sell this to other regular folks that are out there, all kinds of stuff can be brought up in the grand jury situation. Where's our PFD? Vaccine mandates, stuff that's going on in the school board. You guys, when you're out selling this grand jury product, you can find a reason for just about anybody that can use that grand jury for something.
Drag queen story hour.
I go to.
There's
all the
100 different
activists.
concerns out there. All of them, if they're a public concern or safety issue, all of them can be brought in front of a grand jury.
That's why I go to a lot of the activists, even women's activist groups, and I tell them, you will never have any help if this does not happen.
That's right.
That does not get.
We gotta get this
Well,
stuff done through grand juries, is
yeah.
how we gotta get it done. So sell it that way to your friends, to other people that don't understand. Somewhere along the line, they're gonna have a concern. That grand jury, not your legislature, not the trooper, that grand jury is where you wanna bring that stuff to get your answers.
Yeah, like, one issue that is kind of my pet peeve is, I voted twice to move the Capitol. I don't know if any of you but it passed both times. I don't know if you guys know that.
Yeah.
Both times it passed.
Yeah, and they still.
That was ballot initiative, that's law.
They're on their
Why
high
was the
castle
Capitol
then.
not moved? In other words, the law was broken not once, but twice.
Wait a minute, because of Frank initiative, they put forth.
I know, but
But
before
yeah,
that.
right, I'm in your camp, but
I know,
that's the way.
but that just kind of clouds the issue. It
Yeah,
was passed
okay.
and it should have been moved. I'm just gonna say one more thing about some of the evidence that shows this is an ongoing effort is Skidmore and Nancy Mead also going around saying, oh, there were never any, it was never fleshed out how an individual citizen's supposed to interact with the grand jury, and it's all just this nebulous thing, and we need to write all this up to explain that. Well, I got the bright idea because the grand jury handbooks, when you go in, become a grand juror, there's an actual grand jury handbook. They never give it to you, but there is one. You look at it, and there really ain't much in there, but I had read a report in another state where they said that they caught the court system rewriting the handbook to hide the rights of the grand jurors. And so I got the bright idea, I'm like, man, maybe I should try to find the original grand jury handbook when when Alaska first became state. This is it. You want to hear what it says? Here, I'm going to read a couple excerpts that are no longer in our grand jury handbook. It says, like this one here, charges of crime may be brought to your attention in several ways. 1, by the court. 2, by the district attorney. 3, from your own personal knowledge or from matters properly brought to your personal attention. Remember, that's now illegal, but it was in the original grand jury handbook. Number 4, listen to this one. By private citizens heard by the grand jury in formal session with the grand jury's consent. That's where you go in, knock on the door. You can't just give them all your evidence right there. You say, hey, I have a concern and I want to make a formal presentation. They either say yes or no. But that's what you're... And they say this never existed. It did. They wiped it out of the handbook and then claimed it never existed so that they can write in there what they want us to know. Listen to this. Listen to this sentence in the original grand jury handbook. And when I say it's the original grand jury handbook, it is the original one. Right here. Grand Jury Handbook, distributed by the Supreme Court of Alaska. I mean, it's the original one. I don't think it has a date on it, but the court system archivist said, I think it was, she thinks it was printed in like 1958, and then it, and it went on, but listen to this statement. A citizen is at liberty to apply to the grand jury for permission to appear before it in order to suggest or urge that a certain situation should be investigated by it. I mean, how many here think you want to go urge the grand jury to investigate? I mean,
Yeah. Now that you mentioned it, I know about
and
it.
they now say that you cannot do that, and that we never had that right, and nowhere was it ever written. Well, right here in the original, they've been going in, and because you don't print this, you don't print it, you don't, the court system does, but this threatens, of course, if they just start taking it out.
Where did you
No
find
wonder
that?
our children are so
Where did you,
young.
can we all find that? And
We have it on our website now. There is a nice lady, she's the actual court system library archivist. She's the nicest lady ever.
Okay.
She looked and dug and dug and dug, and all of a sudden she calls up, she says, I found it.
And where is this website? Where is this website?
It's on alaskastateofcorruption.com, and it's called the Original Grand Jury Handbook, and then there's the recent ones. And if you really want to hear how blatantly corrupt they are, listen to this one. I was talking to this man right here, Scott Egger, because there was the 2016 handbook or something like that. And in that grand jury handbook, all this had been erased, but it had the days of the week at which grand juries met in every courthouse around the state. In Kenai, it's every Wednesday. In Anchorage, they actually have like 3 grand juries going, but they meet, I think, on like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because it's Anchorage. But in other places, sometimes they meet on Tuesday. But generally, in the state, it's Wednesdays and at different times. And so if you had a problem, you could just look at the grand jury handbook
Go down there.
and figure out when to go to the courthouse to meet the grand jury, because they're not there all the time. And I'm talking to Scott, and do you remember this? I says, and I started printing that, sending it out to my email list. I'm like, hey, if you want the grand jury to look at OCS or look at this or whatever, here's where you find it. And I laughed. I says, Scott, I wonder how long it'll take them to wipe this out of the grand jury handbook. 2 weeks later, it was gone.
wow.
2 weeks later. You Google the grand jury handbook on the court website, and it was gone. And I noticed that because I was printing them, and the page numbers started changing. They got shorter. And 2 weeks later, after I printed out an email and put it out, they just went in there and wiped it out. I mean, do you think they want us to get to the grand jury?
Sounds like we're fighting China more than
Well,
the United States.
Well, we're
From within.
Welcome to Joe
Yeah,
Biden's
so-
America.
anyways,
Which tells you that it is the key. You are pushing on the right
exactly.
point of
Yes.
the machine.
Yeah, I
That
understand.
is the key.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And David Ingell, you probably heard this name. He was an attorney, but he lives in June, or well, used to live in June. He's living there now. Great guy. He started seeing what we were doing. He wrote a book on the grand jury, and the stuff he found in other states is unbelievable. They ran into the same exact problem we are. And like in California, they had systemic corruption. The grand jury worked with like some crusading citizens, which I guess I could call that. That's what you are right here.
Wow, let me get
And
my
then
key.
like in some of the places like newspaper editors, whatever. But in California, there's one statement that says the corrupt establishment even received assistance from from the California Supreme Court, which issued rulings restricting the grand jury's abilities. Almost sounds like the Alaska Supreme Court does. You could just change California to Alaska and it would fit perfectly what we're up against right here. So what we're up against and dealing with has happened exactly in other states. Exactly. And it was like crusading citizens. And then in some, the Supreme Court issued gag orders on the grand jury, and then there was mysterious leaks from the grand jury where the evidence of what they wanted to get out got out. And so, and then in another one, the Supreme Court threatened to jail all the grand jurors for contempt of court. The grand jury then went to the governor, and the governor came in and exposed what was going on. All of a sudden, the Supreme Court backed down. And that's what we're up against. We're in the right. We just keep, they're tough and big. They're like this bear here. But if all of us have a sharp stick, this poor bear, he ain't got a chance. But if we go up against him one at a time, we're going to lose every time. But, you know, but what I'm saying, and that book is on the website too. And I went through, I think the book's, what, 130 pages long?
Yeah.
I went through and I highlighted what I thought was important. So basically, if you look at it, inside of a half hour, you could get some incredibly valuable information. Incredibly
He did a
valuable.
great job on that book.
Huh?
He did a great job.
He
on
did,
it.
yeah.
Did Ingell.
He gave us a huge boost there.
Yeah.
What's the name of the book?
It's a long, it's a horribly long title. It's like
Alaska Grand Jury.
Well, it's the
No, he's got.
Alaska Grand Jury, its history, blah, 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 blah. And then the last line, and it's what's suppression by officials who fear its independence is kind of the last part of the title. It's got a title about that long.
It's on your website though, right?
Yeah.
It is.
Everything, all this stuff's all on the website. If you got any questions about anything we've talked about, all of it's on the website.
And
Yeah.
again, the
But-
website is?
State Alaska.
AlaskaStateOfCorruption.com.
Is
And
that
then we have
it?
another website for the Grand Jurors Association called Alaska Grand Jurors Association.org. And I don't know if everybody here gets my emails, but everybody, I think everybody's been writing down their name, and I guess do I have permission to put you on my list for if you know if you're not there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And
those that
I
came
think
in
all of
late
you are
might
probably
wanna
on it. I don't know.
sign it.
Anybody here that isn't on it?
Probably not me. I haven't seen you guys since Kenai.
Okay. Do you have an email address then?
Wait till the end.
Not when I don't normally go through emails, so not really.
I was gonna say, wait till the end when we're done before giving that kind of stuff out.
Okay. Well,
For personal anyways.
Are we close to being done here, or?
There's a sign up, isn't there, for people to get their?
Yeah, we got a sign up sheet there. But,
Sign up sheet.
So how many people, I'm curious, how many of you guys are gonna be there tomorrow morning?
I'm gonna be there.
So a good portion of us?
yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, the visual of people, that's
I was surprised.
that's
how
the
many
good
people
juju that
last
we
time.
have, so.
We had at least 20 people or more.
Thank you so much for letting
Yeah.
your,
Oh my gosh.
making your
And I'm dead
house
serious,
here
if you
available.
guys, I don't have any guests or clients until at least May, I have no bookings. If this house is open and you can get together 10 people, the house is yours to use. If you can get together 50, I know this house will hold 60. I've done it, we just have to rearrange furniture a little bit. Put the bear in the closet, you know. Kidding, you know, did. But,
Well,
yeah, the house is yours and I'll even clean up, I don't care.
well, I appreciate you letting.
Yes,
you know,
they
Yeah.
some
say
of the
you
stuff.
help.
It helps a lot.
Yeah, and if you have people that need, if you wanna spread the word to out-of-towners, they can come in and spend the night. Right now, I have 3 rooms open, 2 are kind of technically used. But the one guy leaves, I think he leaves beginning of May for some trek up at McKinley or something. So there'll be another room open, and my other guy's an electrician, he'll leave if I tell him to leave.
We'll see you
This
tomorrow
is
morning.
important to
Well,
me, it is.
Appreciate it. Anyway, and should we wrap up
Yeah.
and so, website stuff, go over that or what?
Website, email, phone number if you want.
Okay.
Whatever you want to give out there to the public so they can be involved.
Okay, well, number 1, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp, at the Nesbitt Courthouse. Was April 19th. Like to see people there because it's pretty important. If you want more information, you can go to either of 2 websites. One is called Alaska Grand Jurors Association.org. Also has a sign-up sheet for getting information to all 60 legislators. The other website that we have that has a lot of the evidence on it, especially the stuff against Marla Greenstein, That website is alaskastateofcorruption.com. If you want to email me, my email address is my last name, which is Haeg. It's Hotel Alpha Echo Golf at alaska.net. And then my cell number, which you can text to, is 907-398-6403. And again, my name is David Haeg, and appreciate everybody watching, on Facebook Live,
Thanks for
or
coming.
everybody that showed up here. So
Thank you.
thanks
Thank you.
again.
Wow.
Alrighty, folks, you guys all know the routine. Like, share this video, find it on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all at Politadick. Please go to our website, politadick.com, click that support button. Help us afford to be able to make it to more events like this one. Your support is what made this possible today and every day. Thank you guys all for being here. Do not forget